Okay, so good morning. Hopefully all of you can see my screen. If you can't, let me know. We'll move into introductions here, and then I'm going to just turn it over to Matt to let him take us through the presentation for today. So I'll just start. Carla McLean, I'm with the City of Boardman. Officially, my title has changed. I'm now the planning specialist. Stephanie Case is now the planning official, and that change took place on July 1. And yes, I'm ecstatic. um, so we'll just keep doing introductions here in the room. So to my right,
Heather Baumgartner, City of Boardman.
Jennifer Layton, Sandy Groman.
And we've got our consultant team.
Hi, I'm Isa Andrews with Kittleson.
And Matt Hugart, also with Kittleson.
And if we head to those on Zoom, Alex Hattenhauer.
Afternoon, Alex Hattenhauer, local business owner.
Okay, and David Jones.
Local business owner and planning commission.
Teresa Penninger.
Teresa Penninger, planning manager, ODOT.
And Kelly.
Kelly Martin, I'm the ODOT Region 5 Access Management Engineer.
Okay, I think I got everybody on Zoom. Did I miss anybody? Okay, doesn't look like I did. So Matt, tell me when to drive and shift I want to say slides.
Yeah. The thingy, yeah.
The thingy up there, yes.
Well, all right, how about now?
Okay, I can do that. Oh, I gotta activate that one. Then I can. Okay, there we go.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, so thank you. Today is kind of our first official PAC meeting beyond the kickoff meeting we had a month or so ago. And we on the consultant team, with some help from ODOT staff, have been busy generating what we're calling at this point just concepts. These are just ideas. They're not meant to be anything more than that, just for generating discussion. And I think what we're trying to do with these concepts is put together kind of an honest list of potential infrastructure modifications to accommodate the anticipated levels of growth and multimodal circulation needs that the city is striving for. The goal of these concepts, again, beyond that sort of initial list, is to find at least a diamond or two in the rough, if you will, of potential concepts that are starting to rise to the top of the list, so that we can dive a little more deeply into those concepts, both from a sort of a sketch level standpoint, but also from the ability to really kind of get to the heart of what some of the challenges and opportunities these concepts would provide, so that we can then dive just a little more deeply into the analysis and then hopefully come up with a concept which we'll then start calling an alternative that would meet the challenges that this interchange and this city and this community are facing with the infrastructure limitations that it currently has. So these pictures, again, I just kept them up there for reference purposes. We can come back to them, but they're drone pictures that we had taken a couple months ago, showing just various perspectives of the interchange and the local circulation system and Main Street. So I'm leaving them there for references, but we'll come back to them if we need them. So next slide. Go ahead and skip past this as well. One more. Okay. So you might remember this slide from our kickoff meeting, and I kept it on here just for perspective, but these yellow lines represent all of the kind of the collector level facilities that exist within the vicinity of the Main Street I-84 interchange. And I think the important thing to note is there's been a lot of movement on the city's part particularly on the south side, to implement the vision that was created with your current IAMP that we're trying to update here. I think maybe on the south side, it's kind of important to note that the southeast and southwest quadrants of First Street have been fully completed, along with kind of a westerly extension of Oregon Trail Boulevard. And then everything that you see in dashed yellow represents planned future extensions or development continuation of that circulation system that will be implemented either through capital projects by way of Oregon Trail Boulevard, or more than likely development that will occur in that kind of southeasterly quadrant south of Oregon Trail. And this represents kind of the heart of what the city has been trying to do to accommodate the circulation needs of this interchange. And I'll give it back to Carla because I think she wanted to point out a particular change that's on the books that the city is considering at the moment.
In the northwest quadrant, this is Park Avenue here, named because it goes past City Park. The portion between Main and First is only 20 feet of right of way. And we've had requests from one of the 4 adjoining landowners to consider modifying that. And so the city is going to be moving forward with a road vacation request on that. It's actually probably more problematic as a street than it is beneficial. Again, it has pretty narrow right of way. There's a fire hydrant that actually looks like it's in the middle of the street. It's not, but it looks like it is. And so sometime as we get into the fall, we will be going through the vacation process for that little yellow strip right there. Hopefully you can see my cursor on your screens. So
People have been using that as a street for years.
yeah, well, and it's platted. I mean, it's a street, but again, it's the width is more like an alley rather than a street. So,
So how are you gonna prevent people down that road when that time comes? Because there's so many people that use it right now.
yeah, I think there'll be some fit. I think at least 2 of the landowners on the First Street side want to eliminate that pass-through traffic, and it'll allow both the apartment and the gentleman who purchased the old city building to actually expand their parking area by that. It's only 10 feet to each of them, but it gives them 10 more feet to manage their parking. Yeah.
Okay, so next slide, Carla.
Sorry.
It's okay. So you might also remember this slide as well. This is just a visual representation of the various projects that were included in the current interchange area management plan. I'll keep using IAMP from this point forward, even though that's not any easier to say than interchange area management plan sometimes. But these are the summation of the projects that were in the IAMP. So on the left side, these are all left-hand side of the slide. These are all kind of near-term visionary projects that include, at a minimum, some modifications to the westbound and eastbound off-ramps, widening and or lengthening of those off-ramps to better accommodate the traffic demands that are currently out there. So the widening and lengthening would be working within the current bounds of those off ramps themselves. There's plenty of right of way in there, but there's embankment and slopes, so it's not just as simple as moving some earth. It's a little bit more challenging, but that was a noted need 14 some odd years ago that still exists and exists more importantly, I think, in today's scenario, today's traffic scenario, as you may have experienced over time. Also, in that near-term scenario is a recognition that Front Street, at some point, both North and South Front Streets, they continue to exist within the influence area of those interchange ramp terminals. And I think there's a noted recognition that traffic volumes at some point, maybe even sometimes today, you have trouble making turns to and from those. And so the vision, at least back then, was to restrict or modify those intersections to what we call right in, right out at a minimum. So if you're northbound on Main Street and you wanted to turn onto Northeast Front Street or North Front Street, you can make a right turn, and you can make a right turn out of Front Street, but you wouldn't necessarily be able to make a left turn in those situations. So that would be accomplished through some intersection modifications, some geometry modifications, and some median treatments more than likely. It was left, the details of that was left somewhat vague in the planning process. So those were the kind of the near term, and I think for all intents and purposes, we all recognize those are kind of needed today in some time period in some scenarios. And then on the right-hand side, there was a more of a vision to finalize and implement some traffic modifications, namely at least a signalization of the westbound ramp terminal, a widening of the overpass to primarily allow for left turn movements, a separate left turn lane to go westbound on the on-ramp. And then as needed, or if needed, to better accommodate the traffic modifications of those intersections, restricting further front streets to fully close them off. And I think it was left somewhat vague in terms of how that might happen. And perhaps there's even some opportunity to not fully close them off, but maybe further restrict them, but still allow maybe some right turn movements. It's to be determined, but I think there's a noted recognition, but that was needed at the time as a very longer term scenario to better accommodate those demands. And I think in some traffic scenarios that we've been looking at, some of those improvements are needed today. So back in 2009, that was the future. Well, we're kind of in the future at the moment. So here we are trying to finalize and refine as we go forward. So. Teresa, I know you're on, and you were probably the only person on the call or in the room here today that was around for that previous IAMP. So did you have anything you wanted to add to my quick and dirty summary there?
No, I think you did a good job summarizing that.
Okay, good. All right, next slide. Okay, so these next slides are, can I actually drive the?
Yeah, you can certainly drive.
At least I'll use it to point.
Yeah, perfect. Yes.
Okay, so these next slides, we're just going to go through the kind of the thumbnail images of the concepts that were shared out with everybody. So this first image on the left here, this is concept number 1. I'll give a very high overview of the details of these concepts. But just remember, these are sketches. They're not meant to be a detailed engineering analysis, just a quick sketch to kind of convey the general theme of the concept. But when you get into the details, the concepts are going to look a lot more detailed, and there's a lot more going on or likely to be needed as we try and implement one or more of these concepts. So just recognize them as nothing more than quick sketches so that we can convey the general thought going forward. So concept number 1 is, I'm just calling it the diamond/tight diamond. So the diamond interchange is essentially what we have out there, and it gets its name from the geometry where you come on and off, and sort of a traditional. Oh, sorry. Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
In my world over here. So the diamond interchange form gets its name from the shape of the on and off ramps, and kind of has that diamond look to it. So this concept is essentially just modernizing and enhancing what you have out there today. And without going into all the nuanced details, I think what we tried to do with this concept is recognize that in this diamond form, these interchange ramp terminals, when needed, would be signalized. That would be the traffic control scenario with concept number 1. And with concept number 1, with a signalized scenario, kind of hearkening back to the current IAMP, they come packaged, or this concept comes packaged with a closure of North and South Front Streets. I think that's one of the things that we feel as engineers and planners, that with a signalization in the geometry needs, North and South Front Streets are still going to be way too close to that future signal. and the geometry improvements needed to where both of those would potentially more than likely need to be fully closed off. At least that's the concept today for purposes. And then it kind of keeps the local circulation plan that's currently taking shape on the south side and the north side. So what does turn on and off of Front Street would more than likely need to revert or shift over to Boardman on the north side. And then on the south side, what's coming on and off of Front Street would shift over to the Prague local circulation improvements that are currently taking shape and or the Oregon Trail Boulevard connection. So it recognizes, and at least it's understood in this concept, that there would be some restrictions to Front Street, and the local circulation needs of Front Street would have to shift over to kind of the parallel adjacent system. And I understand from outreach that we've had today that that's not going to be very popular with some business owners. But again, these are concepts. You'll see some other concepts that we've shared and other ideas where we kind of maintain Front Street. So this is a trade-off, I think, with a signalization scenario. These bubbles over here, they're not in any level of detail that you're going to be able to really understand all this. But I wanted to share a couple of things. Number one, the traffic volumes that we're using to kind of analyze these concepts were taken from the Boardman TSP that was done a little over a year ago. And that TSP I characterize as an honest and conservative assessment of growth in Boardman. So it's all of the parcels on the north and south sides of the freeway that city staff at the time believed to be primed or ripe for future development. And so it accounts for all of the reasonably likely parcels that could see development, whether it's residential or commercial. And then we took a shot at estimating what those parcels in that development might look like, and then estimated the traffic volumes, and then distributed those traffic volumes onto the system. So a lot of the volumes that we're showing here coming on and off of this interchange are taken directly from the TSP and then modified accordingly to fit the circulation bounds of the concept. Two things to point out of here. Number one, I think if we go with a very standard, and this is bubble here represents the westbound ramp terminal. So if we go with a scenario where we widen the off ramp to include a left and then kind of a shared through right, and then we assume a widening of the Main Street overpass at a minimum to include a single northbound lane and then a separate left turn lane to go onto the on ramp. And then we kind of mirror that geometry down to the south or the eastbound ramp terminal. At a minimum, you've got what equates to what we believe to be a 4-lane widening of the Main Street overpass, or a reconstruction of that overpass if widening isn't an option. So that's one northbound lane, one left turn lane to go onto the westbound on-ramp, and then what we call a side-by-side left turn lane. So they don't share the same lane. They're essentially their own travel lane in both directions. One southbound left turn lane to go onto the eastbound on-ramp, and one southbound lane to continue onto Main Street. That equates to basically a 4-lane travel cross-section. If we simply take the volumes from the TSP and project those as a 20-year forecast of growth in the city, a traffic signal with a very basic signalization phasing setup would have an output or would buy us some long-term capacity. But what it more than likely won't do is give us all of the capacity that ODOT would like to see with a investment like this. So in other words, we don't build the overpass to fit the bounds of the growth. We build it to fit the bounds of the growth plus some extra room on the back end to accommodate longer term growth beyond kind of the 25-year period or 20-year period. So I think that's one of the findings. And I know ODOT and Kelly and Teresa, thank you for being on the call today. We have a TAC meeting with some ODOT folks later this afternoon. We'll probably get into a lot of this detail with us here, but And I know ODOT on the side, and Marlo has been looking at these volumes himself and trying to come to grips with sort of the reality here. But at least from our perspective, we're not going to have enough capacity with just that simple geometry that I outlined here to outright meet all of the capacity requirements that ODOT would look for when putting in a $20+ million investment into a widening and an interchange improvement, probably way more than 20 million. Oops, sorry. So it's not scrolling back. Carla, how do I do this?
Oh, probably because that's the one you want.
There you go. Yeah, sorry. So anyway, I think that's just kind of an important thing to point out, at least at this highest level. And so this next sort of bubble over here is, okay, what kind of geometry and roadway lane capacity scenario might we need to get us that extra capacity in the interchange that would give us more growth out into the future? And so what that looks like is something a little bit more intensive, where we've got more lanes on Main Street, north and south, and then left turn lanes, kind of dual left turn lanes coming off the westbound off ramp. So instead of having a 4-lane overpass, now you're looking something more along the lines of 5 lanes. And so you've got one single northbound lane, you've got your side-by-side left turn lanes, and then you've got at a minimum at least 2 southbound through lanes that you would need to carry southward, at least past the eastbound ramp terminal. And then it's that point, what to do with those extra lanes, probably merge them back to single lanes or your 3-lane cross section. Or worst case scenario, maybe you've got some trap lanes at some local circulation roads. That's a detail we haven't really worked out here in this concept, but that's probably a reality if we look at a diamond interchange form like this. So I know I'm spending a lot of time on this one. We're not going to spend as much time on the other concepts, but a lot of the operational challenges that we're noting with a traditional diamond upgrade carry forward with some of the other concepts that involve signalization. So let me pause and let a few folks get a few questions in. This might be a little bit of a surprising reveal, but from your own perspectives, does this surprise you? Does it concern you? What are your feelings based on kind of what I've shared here today?
The only concern that I see is that this concept was established in 2009. In 2009, we didn't have the businesses on the front streets like we do now.
Yeah.
And so it is necessary to move away from this concept to something that's a little more appropriate for the businesses that are currently there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was 7 years ago. So
yeah. No, I think we fully recognize that this is a concept that, while it might serve the community and it might serve the interchange, I think it has a negative impact on the Front Street businesses, or at least the businesses that rely on Front Street for quick and easy access to its customer base, which is a lot of our freeway customers coming on and off the interstate. So,
David, you've got your hand up.
I would say that this doesn't even serve the community. The community depends on those businesses and likes the convenience of those businesses as well coming off the freeway. So it doesn't even serve the community, honestly. This is in my opinion, it's not a good concept. And if we have to block off those Front Street roads, then yeah, it's a delete in my opinion.
And I do agree with David on that, because our community are the ones that have those businesses. Those are all local business owners. So, and that is something that we've really strived hard to have, is to support our local community to build businesses here, not to have big entities come in, but to support our local business owners. So, and that's what the bulk of those are.
Yeah, thank you. Teresa and Kelly, I know you're kind of here more just listening in because we've got an opportunity for the TAC meeting later this afternoon, but do you have any kind of ODOT perspective on this concept that you'd like to share with the PAC members today?
Only thing I could say It was in 2009 when we looked at this, and there were some businesses that are no longer there then too, particularly on the south side, that were highly dependent on the interchange traffic. I think the realization came down to good access makes good business. They realized that if with what we were able to look at and proceed to, was the recommendation that basically if folks have difficulty getting in and out of the businesses, then with the increase in traffic and stuff, but having some sort of circulating road or something like that to get back to them that was that's now been developed and being developed was the way to maybe address that. But I do respect that there has been change in over the years in the types of businesses that are out there as well. And well, like I said, it was what we had in the toolbox that we could look at. This seemed to be the most logical solution at the time, because in the end it was determined that everything that we looked at or were able to look at that time was it came back to widening the bridge. Just like Matt's been talking about, whether it's a 4-lane or a 5-lane crossing, that's what it came back to.
Kelly, anything from you?
I don't think I have anything to add other than what Teresa's already said. I think we're here to evaluate the options and come up with the best solution that works for Boardman today. And that's what we're here to do.
Thank you. Yep. Just chime in as we go then. I won't call you out particular next time, but yeah, please feel to chime in as we go.
And to potentially implement a plan like this, where there's so much widening of the bridge, I mean, how long would that actually take, and how long would it affect the businesses that are already in place? Because you're talking about some extensive work there. I mean, we got to take into consideration how fast can we do a project of this nature that's not going to affect all of us.
Yeah.
Because that is our only route from the north to the south and the south to the north. I mean, that's it. That's the only one we have. So if it's closed down, we lose access without having to get on the freeway, take the Port Morrow exit and come all the way around.
Right.
So,
Which means pretty much all of the north businesses would lose all of their business
from the south.
Which is huge, because nobody's going to want to go around.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe from that perspective, maybe one thing to put forth with all concepts we'll talk about here today is there's an implementation constructability aspect with all of these projects. And I think one of the things that's a challenge with the existing bridge structure is it's got its problems. It's got a height clearance issue that is workable today because you can come on and off the on-ramps to get some of those height projects, right? To scoot through the intersection or interchange.
But most of those roads are low profile, and so they're scraping the freeway. They're scraping they're creating damage. I mean, they're not damaging the bridge, but they're damaging the ramps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's not like we've got a fully functioning bridge that we just have to keep, right? Now it also is limited in the sense that it doesn't have great multimodal elements, right? It's got a pretty narrow sidewalk piece on both sides, and it's got a striped bike lane that's not really a bike lane for anyone in particular. So it's narrow, right? It's narrow. It's got sight distance challenges, and it's got the other things. So, in any concept that involves a bridge widening, is it really a widening or is it a replacement of the bridge, right? And if it's a replacement of the bridge, when you get into a constructability thing, you're more than likely widening or building the new bridge offset from the existing one so you can still maintain traffic, right? So
that's
a lot
what
of
they
the
did on I-82 over the bridge. They've got 2 bridges now. It used to be a single lane.
Yeah. So a lot of these concepts probably is a scenario where you build half the new bridge, probably to the west, and once it's done, then you tear down the old one and you move the traffic over, and then you finish widening the bridge
Yeah.
where the old one used to be. So you probably have a recognition that there's a little bit of a geometry offset shift in the travel lanes, and the wider it is, the more that offset, and the more that offset, the more the potential impacts you have to the Main Street corridor in one direction or the other. And at this concept sketch level, we can't really get into what that looks like. But we have to recognize that it's probably a reality of just about any concept we talk about here today is yes, a replacement is a challenge, and it's going to create a scenario where we're probably going to have to phase and shift traffic patterns to implement it. That can increase the complexity in the design that we just don't have the ability to talk about at the moment. So, but yeah. Any other questions on the diamond one? And I promise we'll be more quick with the rest of the concepts.
Alex, I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
So all the concepts have that point of widened or replaced Main Street overpass, but can we just come to the conclusion that the replacement is the route to go and concept around it? Because I mean, eventually, someday it's gonna. I mean, the height restriction is an issue already in the width. So I don't know how you're gonna widen it and not address the height issue. But is that, am I getting over my skis here? Or, I mean,
No, I think Alex is right. It's we don't even know how many strikes it's going to take the bridge out. It's already sustained so many strikes already.
Yeah, I was kind of purposeful in my language to say widening and or replacement, just because maybe there's a scenario where we can widen it and maybe the grade of the freeway can be lowered underneath it so that we don't have to fully replace everything. So there's any number of options on the table to deal with it that at this planning, high level planning concept, we just can't assume at this point. So we'll continue to use the word replace or widen interchangeably. But yeah, you're right, Alex. There may be a scenario where we, at a point in time, we just say, look, let's quit kidding ourselves here. This is a replacement more than it is anything else.
okay, thanks.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand, replacing widening here. What a wild idea here. If we instead of shifting the traffic, and that will impact the business, is it possible in the real world, if that halt? I mean, we city residents move to the next exit, completely eliminate, and then rebuild. Because that process could be faster because now we're not dealing with the traffic there.
If I'm understanding your question right, you're saying we completely just recognize that we've got Laurel Lane. Let's just assume that it's going to have to be our north-south route for a period of time while we're reconstructing the Main Street overpass. Is that what you're asking? You're saying?
No, I'm saying the next exit to east. Let's say if replacement is the route we go with, and instead of building while there is traffic, we just take out this bridge, move all the traffic to the next exit on the east, and reconstruct this bridge. That timeline could be shortened because we're not dealing with the traffic while construction is going at the same time.
Yeah, it's a great concept, and I think for planning purposes, we're not going to get into those nuances just yet. But that could be a reality. So if at the end of this planning process we decide that one of these concepts is the best way to go, the implementation side of things deals with that. So ODOT and the city might decide, hey, a 2-month closure in a forced relocation of traffic to Laurel Lane makes more sense than trying to piecemeal a widening or reconstruction together. That might be a reality, but that's something that happens way down the road after we've already figured out how to build and rebuild or widen. So that's a possibility. Yeah, I don't discount that, but that's not an assumption we'll deal with at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great comment. That is definitely a possibility. Okay, well, let me move on. So Concept number two is like we're calling the diamond, but with roundabouts. So instead of a signalized interchange, what if we put roundabouts at those ramp terminals? And that's not something that ODOT has traditionally done. But I won't say why. But statewide, it's just not a interchange form that the state has fully adopted or moved forward with in a lot of scenarios yet. But the state of Washington, on the other hand, does it quite a bit. So it is possible. And there are other states that have implemented that. I think the diamond roundabout scenario has some benefits that are not fully realized compared to the diamond. But it also has some disbenefits. So for example, with a signalized diamond intersection, the ramp terminals can much more easily accommodate oversized freight traffic. Roundabouts are a little different. It's a little harder for some of that oversized freight to circumnavigate a roundabout, and so that affects the size and the geometry and the footprint of that roundabout a little bit more than it would with a diamond interchange with signalized form. But I think maybe what I want to point out here is while a roundabout might make some sense from a circulation standpoint, it also has its limitations, capacity limitations, a little bit even more so than the signalized ramp terminals. So this same bubble scenario that I'm presenting here, if we just went with a very simple single lane roundabout scenario, we don't have the capacity with at least our forecast travel demands to fully accommodate just as generic single lane roundabout. There's just way too much forecast travel demand anticipated or at least forecast in the long 20-year period. And so that roundabout would need some widening and some multi-lane treatments that's kind of illustrated over here. So I think that roundabout scenario kind of has the same limitations from a ramp overpass from an overpass scenario where we go from at a minimum kind of that 4-lane scenario that we know doesn't have the full capacity to more of that 5-lane. So the hope was, at least initially, that maybe a roundabout would allow us to maintain or minimize the amount of overpass widening. And at least at this stage, we don't believe it has that benefit. So you kind of have the same widening, Main Street overpass widening sort of limitations with a roundabout diamond that you would with a signalized diamond. And that further refinement is necessary. And I know ODOT, Marlo in particular, has been working on this with me in parallel. And so we'll have more to share this afternoon, the TAC meeting. But we believe, at least at this point, that we still have a lot of capacity limitations with the roundabouts.
But this would work if the bridge was taller, because then we wouldn't have the large equipment coming off the freeway. It would be able to pass under.
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that if we rebuilt the overpass with or without roundabouts, signalized or roundabouts, yeah, some of that eastbound, westbound freight on the interstate system could clear it more easily, right?
Yeah, it would probably just go down to the Port of Morrow.
Correct. But one of the things we learned from the Port of Morrow itself is they rely on this interchange today to get some of the high, wide, and heavy stuff that they service through their port facility. And this is the easiest way out of the port today. So if there was a recognition that the port's going to fix that problem and address it through its other access scenarios, whether it's the airport, what's the one out to the US 730?
Bond Range Road,
The internal port road up to 70.
Lewis and Clark.
Lewis and Clark. Yeah.
Lewis and Clark.
If they were fixed it, somehow that way, or addressed it somehow that way, then maybe it gets some of that Port of Morrow highway and heavy stuff out of here, then yes, then I think the roundabout and or signalized scenario makes a lot. There's a lot of what ifs that go here with all this, but I think at least from a roundabout scenario, it doesn't look too much different from a signalized scenario, at least operationally.
Well, the big thing for me is don't have a left-hand turn coming off the interstates.
Yeah. Yep. So what you do have with the roundabouts is the turns occur within the roundabout. So some of that lane geometry thing looks a little different. And perhaps, again, this is sketch level and we're not fully positive about this, but with a roundabout scenario, it might allow the front street connections to maintain. You know, you keep the right in, right out at a minimum. And that's a geometry question that I don't think we've fully worked out, because those size of those roundabouts could influence whether Front Street keeps its connections or not. And they may have to go away if we get into a more detailed sketch layout. If that roundabout geometry increases to a point where it starts to push into the Front Street intersections, then perhaps you know, they don't go away. But for now, they're sketched in a scenario where perhaps we can still keep them. It does offer up a potential to provide at least some limited access to Front Street that you don't probably have under a signalized scenario. Any other questions about the roundabout scenario before we move on? Okay, the next several here, I didn't provide the bubble diagrams because they all look very similar, but we came up with at least a couple more roundabout options that I wanted to put on the table. So number 3 is a diamond that is a roundabout, but the roundabout is a little different. It's got kind of what we call the dog bone or a peanut shape to it. And the difference between the previous roundabout and this one is you don't have full circulating U-turning capability with the dog bone. It kind of keeps the circulation within the bounds of the 2 ramp terminals, but you couldn't use one like this for turning around. So for example, on the north side, if we had I'll go back here. Actually, can you go back for me, Carly? Yeah, if you were on the Front Street scenario on the north side and you couldn't make a left out because it was right in, right out to go north on Main Street, you could, under this scenario, come down, make a right turn, and then circumnavigate around the roundabout as sort of a U-turn option to go north. Under this one, this dog bone, you kind of minimizes or eliminate that option. And what that does is it provides a little bit more capacity to those roundabouts, but it offers a restriction in the sense that they couldn't be used for U-turning purposes. So you trade off circulation and benefit for just a little bit more capacity with the dog bone. And that would be the only reason why you might consider the dog bone, just to eke out just a little bit more capacity than you would otherwise. Number 4 is very similar to number 2, but in this case, we're really going to go roundabout crazy with this one. So we kind of have the same interchange configuration, but we recognize that we would want to put roundabouts at Boardman and at Oregon Trail at a minimum. And what that does is it gives you all the benefits of what roundabouts provide in terms of U-turn and circulation options. So if you've got a restriction to Front Street of right in, right out, you could, for example, come off the freeway, you visit a future use over here in the southwest quadrant. To get back to the freeway, you have choices. You can come down to First, down to Oregon Trail Boulevard, come down to the roundabout and circumnavigate back to the north, and then go back to the westbound or the eastbound on-ramp. Well, in this option, you have the option of visiting your business on Front Street, and you could come back out to Front Street and then just go down to the next roundabout, make a U-turn. It provides maybe just a little bit or a hair or two more of sort of a circulation option. And that's the south side. You kind of get the same benefit on the north side, where if you come off the freeway, you don't have to restrict yourself to signalized scenarios for getting back. You can use the roundabouts. Now, I think it's a recognition that any kind of a roundabout at Boardman Avenue, for example, probably would have to be a little bit of a smaller, more compact size roundabout because the width of that intersection is only so big, and you don't want to push a roundabout scenario that starts to push into the adjacent businesses and impact those. But you have a little bit more room in at least 1 or 2 of those quadrants that you do otherwise. So that could be an option.
It's also a school bus route.
Yeah, and we know that's a huge peak hour sort of intersection that accommodates a lot of traffic at least a couple of times a day, and then a third time a day with all the pedestrians. Yeah. And so those compact roundabouts probably look a little different. They've got circulating islands that you can drive over as opposed to have to navigate. And that's a detail that would have to be worked out, but there's enough evidence to suggest that perhaps that's an option. So the corridor roundabouts, you can kind of marry that with any one of these concepts going forward. We just wanted to have at least one scenario where we recognize that Front Street being cut off, and whether completely cut off or partially cut off, perhaps a corridor roundabout system at Boardman and Oregon Trail or at other locations could help to ease the sting of that restriction. I know it doesn't fully resolve it, but perhaps it gives just a little bit more flexibility to those business owners and the concerns that they would likely have.
Well, and this may be okay for 5 years, maybe 10, but then when are we gonna outgrow these roundabouts? Because when is traffic gonna be too extensive that, okay, we did all this work, but it didn't work for us anymore? And I don't see this sustaining us for 20 years, 5, maybe 10 at the most. So are we doing all this work to try to put in those 4 roundy rounds to have it be obsolete before we know it?
I got an answer to you for that one. It's probably not the best answer. But I think there's at least some recognition that there is a finite capacity scenario here with all these intersections. So we work in this kind of this weird cocoonish bubble in the transportation planning side where we can keep adding traffic to the system, right? And we can keep saying, okay, there's a limitation in the capacity that we're forecasting here. But in reality, you usually don't get to a capacity scenario because when the intersection breaks down, people don't normally force themselves to sit through a breakdown intersection if there are options, right? So even though we're forecasting maybe a situation where an intersection goes over capacity in 20 years, that's just a demand-based forecast. And in reality, when it gets to a breakdown scenario, people know that if I go through there at 5:30 p.m. every afternoon and I have to sit through that traffic signal for 3 cycles, and I've got Laurel Lane down the road or Tower Road down the road, I'm just going to choose those routes and not force myself through that. So there is sort of a forced reality here that people are not going to sit through a overly congested capacity-based intersection if we have options. So any one of these scenarios, I think, comes with an understanding that traffic's going to find a way to reroute itself. And Boardman has options, and it's got planned options more so that go beyond the scope of this project. So we've got an improvement at Laurel Lane and an interchange area management plan that will increase the capacity of that interchange at some point. The TSP also recognizes that Olson Road will at some point probably need to provide some kind of an alternative connection across the freeway, and that's got its challenges, and I don't lightly put that one out there. But you have to have, I think, some understanding that a 20-year forecast is just a forecast, and we're not going to create a situation where everything's going to operate over capacity. Traffic will reroute itself and find a way, but we have to have these other systems in place for that to happen. So,
And Oregon Trail Boulevard, and I think it's a when, it connects from Maine to
Baylor.
well, Taylor, but Laurel more so for getting to the other side. It's going to connect to Baylor first, but I don't think that connection gets us the reprieve on the overpass, but the connection to Laurel will.
Yeah, because it's already more than halfway there.
Yeah.
I'll quickly hit on number 5 here, and we're just calling this one the large roundabout. There could be a better terminology, but essentially what we're doing here with these roundabouts is we're basically building them and designing them wider and larger so that we can bring the Front Street intersection into the roundabout. Now, geometrically, it can happen. I think the bigger challenge with an option like this is getting approval from ODOT and FHWA in particular. So there's kind of a design policy in place, and it makes sense. It's not a haphazardly written policy where if you're going to kind of think about the hierarchy of the flow of traffic, right? You've got the highest hierarchy is the interstate system, where it's limited access and it's high speed, high volume. that hierarchy needs to transition itself down to different levels of facilities. So you go from an interstate to sort of a major arterial like Main Street, where it's designed to accommodate that demand. And then from Main Street, you then work your way down to the collectors, and the collectors work your way down to the local streets, right? With an enlarged roundabout scenario, you're kind of violating that policy where you're bringing Front Street, which is essentially just a local street, into the interchange rate terminal, and you're intermixing that flow of traffic. And that is typically, unless it's a very specialized scenario, not typically something that FHWA has approved in the past, simply because they like to maintain that hierarchy of traffic flow. And I think we would have a pretty significant challenge trying to get approval for something like this if there are alternatives on the table that don't require a scenario like this. So I know ODOT's on the line, and Kelly probably is the most qualified to speak to that concept because that's kind of her job on a day-to-day basis in the access management world. But do you have anything you wanted to add to that, Kelly, that I didn't say already?
I'll just reiterate, I think that would be a very difficult challenge. We can most certainly have conversations with them about kind of the considerations going on here, but they do have to provide actual approval before we can make these changes. And I do think that it's going to be, it'll be a hard sell, but still a concept that I think should be maintained for consideration.
Yeah, thank you, Cal. Alex, go ahead.
Just question, there's no concept for a back-to-back roundabout. Maybe the distance is too short, but Bend has several of those. You're in one out and then you're right in another one. And is there enough, would these be single lane roundabouts, or is there not visualizing enough room for a 2-lane? But I mean, roundabouts do work, believe it or not. So I guess there's two questions there. There's a back-to-back roundabout would pull away the interchange traffic, but you're immediately into another one for the side street activity, which I think is important to keep Front Street access available. And a roundabout does that, but if it can't be tied in with the freeway interchange, then you've almost have two back to back, but they may be too close together. It wouldn't work.
Yeah, I think, again, we're talking at a scale here, we can get into that, but I think if what you're asking is, can you do a roundabout like under diamond number 4, and then have an immediate roundabout at Front Street, just right adjacent to it? And I think distance-wise and geometrically, it probably is not feasible. There's just not enough space between those two, but that would be offset by just kind of bringing it in as a larger roundabout under concept number 5.
Yeah.
With all of its challenges going forward, that would be how we would probably geometrically accommodate, just make it larger, not try and put two roundabouts that close to each other.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, no, good question.
So I've been really trying to not say anything as staff, but what about the peanut?
So the peanut roundabout, you're talking about number 3.
Well, I'm thinking of connecting the two. In other words,
Make 5 a peanut.
yeah, make 5 a peanut on each side.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was saying is geometrically you're just too close. You wouldn't have the circulating.
Right, you wouldn't be able to circulate, but could you loop in and down?
I will say, I can't say no. I just say from our perspective, I don't think you've got the room to make something like that. So we could take a closer look at it and
So maybe it's
fully dismiss it. Yeah.
Maybe it's a concept we can kind of put at the side and see if there is enough room, and if there is, potentially bring it into the mix.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm just thinking, if you did the peanut and just made the peanut larger, like you have here,
Mhm.
and it's, you're the thing, you're not, with the peanut, you're not putting a circle, now you'll come back to the north if you're on the north side. But with the diamond, with the large roundabout, you would, but if you didn't have that roundabout, just make it a peanut, so they have to go across the interstate to come back north. And vice versa.
Right, maybe, right.
But making it so that roundabout is, 'cause I like this concept personally. This larger roundabout, combining the two roads onto that.
Why does it have to be a mirrored image on both sides?
It doesn't, right? I mean, there's ways we can manipulate the design here to fit the needs of.
So just thinking on the north side, the interchange and the front streets are closer together, so you don't have as much room. Whereas on the south side, you do have room that instead of putting the roundabout where the on and off ramps are, just put the roundabout on the front street. And then on the north side, put the roundabout on the on and off ramps. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I think maybe what I'm hearing you say is maybe the intersection, the interchange movements get forced into right off movements off the freeway, and then you have to circulate down to the next roundabout.
Well, because on the south side, when you get off the front street, you can get right onto the freeway, and when you're getting off on the other side, you can make a right or a left, either direction. But if you did want to get to the front street, you would just make a right, go around the roundabout, and get on Front Street.
Yeah, those are interesting ideas, and we can add it to the mix. It's one of the things we're here today is what did we miss, right? What other ideas that?
Yeah, because we're not mirror images on the north and south side just because of the distances between the interchanges and the front streets.
Yeah.
So
You're right. There's a little more room on the south side.
How much more space is that?
Who has the number on that? Anybody?
It's not a lot, but it is some. I've never measured it, but I know.
well, and there's not as many businesses affected on the corners on South Front Street as there is on North Front Street, because you're going to be cutting into Sinclair's and Chevron's parking if you put a roundabout on the front street, whereas you're just cutting into ODOT property on the interchange.
Yeah.
But on the south side, there's a lot of room right there.
Yeah.
To put a roundabout on the front streets.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, great questions. Taking notes here, and we'll look at these in a little more detail.
Because we're just trying to figure out a way to impact the businesses as little as possible, but still keep the traffic flow.
Yeah. Good. Okay, let's move past the roundabout, the diamond forms for a second, because there's a lot of other ideas. Here's one. A lot of people are not familiar with this, although there are a few examples in the state. There's one at the moment down in Medford. The images you see here are not that interchange, however. This is what we call a diverging diamond. So the sketch is not doing it justice, so I copied over some photos. Carla knows the answer here, but if you know where this is, you get a huge gold star for the day. But more than likely you don't, unless you've been through Cheyenne, Wyoming. But this is on I-25 in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And this is a diverging diamond. I only use this photo because it's the smallest diverging diamond that I could find. That isn't a monster 5 or 7 lane diverging diamond like you have down in Medford. And so what you do with the diverging diamonds is you essentially turn left turns into right turns by moving the traffic from the traditional right side of the roadway to the left side. So follow my cursor here. So if I'm northbound, pretend this is Main Street. If I'm northbound on Main Street, essentially what's going to happen is I'm going to come to an intersection or a decision point that if I want to go east on I-84, I'm just going to simply make a yielding right turn maneuver, and then I'm going to yield at this point here, and I'm going to get on the freeway and be about my business. If I'm going to go continue north on the freeway, essentially what happens at this signal is I get diverged, and my lane puts me in the left side of the road. And the benefit of that is as I cross over the freeway, when I get to this point and I want to go west on I-84, now instead of making a left turn across traffic, I'm essentially making a left turn that's opposed by nothing but a potential pedestrian here. And so that left turn opposed by traffic is now just a left turn that's opposed by no traffic. And so you have the ability to just make a diverging left turn that merges here with the yields. And I get on the freeway and be about my business. It works in the same way in the southbound direction. So if I'm southbound and I want to go west, I just make a right turn. If I want to go continue south on Main Street, I'll merge and diverge over to the other side of the road. And then at this point, I can make my left to go on westbound or eastbound, or I get to this point and now I diverge and merge back to the current proper side of the road when I get past this signal here. So what were left turns opposed by traffic are now left turns opposed by no traffic. And you eke out a lot more capacity at an interchange form like this, which is the benefit of the diverging diamond. Marlo at ODOT has been helping me look at this one a little bit more in detail. And surprisingly, at least the volumes that we're forecasting here are high enough to where it doesn't give us the levels of capacity we were hoping for. So while there could be some benefit, you might need to look at a diversion diamond with more of a wider interchange form than we were hoping for. But there's some positives to a form like this. Now there's still the same kind of works that we have with the other concepts. We still have to rebuild the Main Street overpass, right? This is a complete rebuild, and it's a complete reimagining of the intersection and the interchange itself. But you do get more benefit out of a diverging diamond because you've changed the flow of traffic and you've minimized those opposing left turn scenarios. So it's an option. And by the way, I didn't mention this, as you come off the freeway, you get the same treatment, right? You can, if you're coming eastbound on I-84 and you want to go south on Main Street, you're just going to make this quick right turn. If you're going left, you're just going to make a left that puts you into this diverged lane, and then you kind of work through the intersection. So you still get that same kind of benefit where you're never making a left turn that's ever opposed by anything more than a right turn or a single lane same direction travel.
So in Rapid City, South Dakota, I thought they had several diverging diamonds. As I'm looking closer at maps, they have one diverging diamond, and they've got the other two that are big are the ones where everything comes to the center with one light. There's road. They put the diverging diamond in a built environment, and so they were kind of where we are. They had probably a little more room than we do, but they did it, and it's maybe 2 lanes. I mean, it's 2 lanes. It's a lane going in both directions, but I think there's a lot of merging going on. So I don't know how wide the bridge was when they started and how much they had to widen the bridge. I certainly had been over it before they did the change, and then I avoided it when it was under construction, and then I've been over it a couple times since they did it. I think it is the smoothest thing to move through. It's like, oh, this is intuitive. I mean, it's very smooth to move through.
But this one also cuts off the front streets.
I was gonna say, how would that affect our front streets?
Yeah.
Because that would
Cut off.
be very confusing trying to get off on a front street with this going on. And I don't like the concept of switching traffic from one side of the road to the other. I mean,
there are lights for that, but
I see a lot of issues with the traffic crossing itself and then having to cross itself back. If we're already having problem with the flow of traffic now, how much more is this going to jumble it up especially during our peak times? And how many accidents are we going to have?
Yeah, they have some accesses that are right there. I don't know that they are full streets that are right there. Again, what I've experienced in Rapid City. So I don't know. I don't know how this would work in that situation. And yeah, Matt does show it as a disconnect. Would there be a way to because when you get to the front street, you're back on the right side, on the American side of the road instead of the English side of the road. But is there enough capacity to maintain some level of right in, right out? I don't know.
David, do you have a hand up?
Yeah, so I've actually been through several of these, and they do go nicely, but what they don't allow for is traffic that wants to get off the freeway and get right back on the freeway.
Yeah.
And also it would cut Front Street completely. I think this is a also kind of a no-go. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, because how are we supposed to do the wide loads and all the heavy loads from the port right now? They wouldn't have access to get back on the freeway like they do now.
Can you imagine how many street lights or traffic lights those heavy loads would take out?
Yeah.
Just
Well,
trying to make the turns.
Yeah, noted on that. I think, I think this type of scenario is it's recognized that if you're rebuilding the overpass, some of that on and off traffic goes away, right? Because you've got clearance on the freeway. So, but what you do probably still have to recognize is an interchange form like this. If Port of Morrow doesn't get an alternative route in place, then this is a limitation on their capacity to still use this interchange.
Well, a lot of their high, wide, and heavy that goes through here comes from the north and goes west. Not all of it, but most of it comes from the north and goes west. And that would just be the same, just right on. I mean, it wouldn't change that.
Yeah.
They wouldn't diverge. They would be going north on the west side of the road, and they would just merge right onto the interchange. So it wouldn't change what I think is the majority of the high, wide, and heavy that is currently using this interchange. Because again, most of those are coming from the north and going west.
I think once again, if this includes a rebuild of the interchange, though, there's a lot of other more efficient ways we can rebuild that overpass to allow for better transition of traffic and everything like that. This is a great concept for other places. I'm not sure if it's going to really work for our situation.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think, one of the things you have to think about too with these interchange forms is just the ease of circulation. A lot of the businesses and future businesses in Boardman rely on freeway travel from I-84. And if you've got a confusing interchange form, it makes it harder for that unfamiliar, uninitiated traveling public to circumnavigate what is, it's an emerging type of interchange form, but they're not common in a lot of places, and people could be unfamiliar with how to get around them and through them, and that could cause some limitations too.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll keep going here just for time purposes. Number 7, again, the sketch doesn't do it justice, but this is what we call a single point urban interchange, or a SPUI, if you've heard that term before, SPUI. This is the SPUI down in Medford. So there is one of these in the state of Oregon. There's going to be another one here shortly, or in the constructions. But this is the one down in Medford. And essentially what you do is you bring the entire interchange itself, the 2 ramp terminals, and you basically combine them into one. And you have one signal in the middle of the overpass structure, in this case, an overpass structure, that controls all the movements. So if you're making a left turn off the freeway or a right turn off the freeway, you are subject to that same signal that everybody else is subject to. So you don't have separate ramp terminals. You have one giant intersection kind of in the middle. To make something like this happen, you actually have a pretty wide and enlarged overpass deck. As you can see in this example, this one is a little wider than the lanes, but that's more of a design challenge that they had to deal with at the time.
So tight.
Yeah, because it's so tight. Yeah, those. So you may not have to have it as wide as this particular example, because the spread of those overpass on and off ramps are a little wider here in this case. But the single point urban interchange would, I think, provide at least one significant benefit that you don't get with any of the other concepts, is you more than likely have the ability to unequivocally keep Front Street connections in place. Now, probably not full access, but you definitely have a scenario where you can more than likely keep those in, right out. And it's probably not a question like it is in some of the other concepts. But that is, I think, one of the biggest benefits of the SPUI, or the single point urban interchange. Now, they are more common in other parts of the state. Washington's got a bunch more than Oregon does, but they're becoming more frequent. I think you see these lot more in more urban settings. Boardman on a random interchange in Eastern Oregon probably is not the first place you would expect to see something like this. And there's certainly a cost and a constructional challenge that goes with it. But it has its benefits, and we don't want to completely dismiss it this way.
I see these in Boise.
Yeah, they're a lot more common in other communities and states.
Rapid City, again, the Rapid City has the diverging diamond, but they have two of these. So, and of course, they're more spread out than this, and they're in areas on the east end of town where growth is happening, but not where the city has historically been. It's in kind of the growth as they're growing towards the Air Force Base. So, yeah.
The next ones are what we call the Parklow class. So the Parklow is an acronym for partial flow relief. And these were brought up at our last kickoff meeting, so I wanted to give it its due assessment. And so we came up with 3 separate Parklows. And they've got different naming terminology, so just bear with me. So concept number 8 is what we call a 2-quadrant Parklow B. So gold star for anyone who knows what B versus A means. B is essentially if you picture where you are on the freeway. So if you're westbound on I-84 and you have a Parklow B, it means your off ramp is B or beyond the overpass. If you are in a Parklow A, it means your ramp is in A or advance of your overpass. So go home tonight and impress your friends and family with your knowledge of Parklow A and B. And they'll roll your eyes at you and you'll be on your way. Like my family does whenever I teach them about this kind of stuff. They just roll their eyes and say, "God, we don't care." So with the Parklow B, essentially what we're doing is, in this case, we would create an off-ramp that would extend and diverge from the westbound I-84 beyond the overpass structure, and then kind of take this enlarged sort of looping geometry and come back to Main Street at this approximate location. Now, these are sketch level concepts here, but this is about the rough level of geometry that you would need to get the proper geometry you would need on the radius of this off-ramp. So as you can see, and I don't dismiss this in any way, shape, or form, that this off-ramp and geometry would push the impact well into the established built environment of Boardman. And I'll point that out from the beginning. I recognize that. But that would be a reality of a geometry need to accommodate a park. But the benefit is essentially you don't have a left turn to go south on Main Street. You've turned that left turn into a right turn, which offers a lot more capacity than a left turn would. Now you still have the northbound left turn to get back onto the freeway. As you can see, this westbound on-ramp would be even more impactful to the built environment and the businesses that exist out there. So you have kind of a very similar need and a setup here on the southwest or southeast quadrant. And the reason why we are at least showing this concept with this enlarged off-ramp is the amount of space you have underneath the overpass today is not wide enough to begin the diverge before the overpass structure. So if it was, then we could potentially start diverging westbound right about where my cursor tip is, and then we could shorten up the geometry and then sort of bring the loop in a much tighter scenario so that it's not impactful over here. But he would still need the same geometry and the same spread and distance up the Main Street corridor. So while you get a little bit of benefit, you still have the same impact scenario to those businesses. So this would be the 2-quadrant Parklow B. And in this case, we just signalized the 2 ramp terminals. This Parklow, or concept number 9, is very similar. In this case, though, we put roundabouts at the ramp terminals, but we added in a feature here so that you can maintain the westbound off-ramp to go north on Main Street. So if you come off in this loop ramp here, this would be restricted or limited just to right turns to go south. And then the signage on the freeway would say, if you're going north on Main Street, you get off on this ramp. If you're going south on Main Street, you get off on this ramp. And that would provide even more capacity at those ramp terminals. So you could kind of mix and match the operational operations of these interchanges, either roundabouts and or traffic signals at those locations. But as pointed out, a lot of impacts, a lot of property impacts that come with these ramp terminals. And this
Well, these aren't even options.
And these would close down front streets, which is what we're
multiple
not,
sections.
Yeah.
we're not wanting to do.
I'm giving it due course.
It just kind of eliminates the need for front streets. I mean, I think that's the problem. Is it eliminates the need for front streets.
Well,
I didn't think it, when I proposed this, I didn't think it was gonna take it as far into those private properties. Because I totally thought we could be able to bend that into the road of the art,
The pre-existing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, and I think that's the reality here. And again, I don't want to spend any more time on these than if we feel like there's necessary, but I will point out, so Marlo at ODOT, Marlo Stanton, he's the Region 5 traffic engineer. He had an idea I shared with me yesterday, and he'll come prepared later this afternoon at the TAC meeting. And so I'll bring his concept forward just for your eyes here today, but it doesn't minimize some of the property impacts, but maybe it minimizes the property impacts to the existing businesses. So follow my cursor here a little bit, but if you kind of take a scenario where you take the loop ramp way out here and use this space out here to get your circulating geometry, and then before you just plow through all these businesses on the alignment that I've shown here, you come across, you loop way out here where you don't have the established businesses. And then you bring your circulating lane and you sort of bend it back around everything, and you come back at roughly the existing where you are now. I give 100% credit to Marlo to that, and he'll have some graphics he'll share today. And you can kind of do the same thing on the southwest or southeast quadrant, where you come out over here and you use this space out near the AWS data center, and then you bend it back around, and then you skirt past Front Street and you come back to roughly the same interchange. Now, it doesn't mean that this property over here is not valuable and this property over here is not valuable. You still have the property impacts, but you don't have those same impacts to the current built structures.
But would you still have to close down those front streets?
No, and I think in that scenario, you would,
Okay.
maybe a little bit more on the front street on this northwest quadrant, but certainly not the front street down here, because I think you've got the room. If you use this parcel right here, and that becomes where you curve around, but then you can come back and go around the front street area on the southwest quadrant or southeast quadrant. That is an option, and I kind of kick myself for not thinking of it. So I wanted to bring it to your attention is I don't think you can fully dismiss you can't dismiss my sketches, but I think there's another option out there where maybe you can work your way around those built structures.
So on the front street, on the north side, northwest side, where would you close that down? Because Sinclair still needs and Sunrise needs to be able to get into their parking lots. Where Village, they're open on two sides, but there's also that road that runs through there that people will still need access to.
Yeah.
So I guess if you closed it down past that corner down towards the end, which is just a dead end street where I don't think anybody goes down there.
I thought there was potential growth down there, Carla.
So when you get, it's expired, but there is one parcel that we had a development proposal on, and then beyond that is Army Corps land.
Oh,
Okay. The city owns a long strip in there behind those houses, and then there's Army Corps land.
Right.
and how hard would that be to get some of that in for the turnaround part?
Well, it presents a challenge, but it's probably a better challenge than others. I mean, yeah.
Right.
I just don't want to limit access into Sunrise, Cafe Cultura, and Sinclair, their parking, plus that street that runs there behind Sunrise in front of Village. So if they did close Front Street down just past Village, I guess that's feasible.
My question is with write-in, write-outs. It says under the descriptions these would still only be write-in, write-outs along Main Street. Why is that, and how would that work?
Yeah, so I focused a little bit more on the ramp design here. Let me at least package up the rest of the potential options that go with it. So let's forget about what I just said for a second about this ODOT idea and just go with my sketch here. So if this ended up being the limited reality of these park loads, then you would come across and you circumnavigate. What we've essentially done is we've pushed the ramp terminal location roughly just at or slightly north of where North Front Street exists today. So the concern we had at this point, if this becomes sort of a major signalized intersection with much wider geometry needs, Boardman Avenue in its current location is pushing into the influence area of that ramp terminal. And we might have a scenario where Boardman might be limited to right in, right out. Now, in that situation, that just throws gasoline on the fire, because not only have we eliminated a lot of potential existing businesses, now we've closed off Boardman Avenue and made it more of a restricted scenario and put a lot more pressure on Columbia to the north, right? Where we don't have the great connectivity that we have today. So,
And it's much more of a residential intersection. Not that Boardman doesn't have a residential component to it, but it is still in a commercial district.
yeah. So I think that's one of the real challenges. If this wasn't enough here and the property impacts wasn't enough to kill this one, I think a scenario where you limited Boardman to right in, right out, that's going to be the deal killer if it wasn't already. So I guess as sketched, the more I look at this one, I almost want to just throw it away. But I want to make sure at least you're thinking about how and why the geometries are and the impacts that they have. So I don't know if I answered your full question, David, but did that get to some of your concern?
Yeah, I'm with you. I kind of think I don't know how that's feasible.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So maybe I'll move on. But I guess what we will do is with the idea that Marlo had shared with me yesterday, and we'll become prepared to the tag, we will share that back to you all and probably have a bunch of refinements to these concepts that speak to some of the unique ideas that others have had. And we'll refine these lists going forward. I do want to point out the Park Low A because it's a little fundamentally different than the Park Low B. So what you're essentially doing is shifting the two ramps, looping on ramps. So now instead of having a looping off ramp like you have in numbers 8 and 9, you've basically put the looping scenario on the on ramp. So if you're northbound on Main Street and you want to go west on I-84, instead of having to make a left turn at your diamond interchange today, you basically just make a right turn and you loop around and you swing around and you merge onto the freeway. Same thing in the southbound direction. You want to go east on I-84, instead of making a left, you'll come down here, you'll turn right, and you loop around and merge. So lefts turn into rights. That's good from a capacity standpoint. But you still have the lefts in the off-ramp scenario. So if you're westbound on I-84 and you want to go south on Main Street, you still have to come to this interchange terminal and then make a left to go south. Same thing in this scenario, you make a left to go north. So that's a benefit, but you also have, as sketched, some of the same property impacts. And I think with the Park Low A, there isn't that ODOT scenario that I didn't sketch here where you can avoid some of those property impacts. You still have pretty significant impacts, but this time those impacts are now shifted to the northeast and southwest quadrants. Not that those are any better, but there's still built environment down there, or potentially built environment that gets impacted. So I almost think concepts 8, 9, and 10 can all be thrown away and potentially resketched with, or at least 8 and 9 can be resketched with the ODOT idea, and that might extend the probability of those concepts a little further than they are currently.
I also see with you get someone that's trying to go eastbound, they're coming from the south, they're gonna, you get traffic coming south. That merge, trying to do that, the only way that would work is if it was further up, of course. And you keep your regular on-ramp going east and your regular
Yeah.
off-ramp, so they're not trying to cross traffic.
Yeah. Yeah.
On that, but like I said, that's built into those private properties. I don't think that's
Yeah.
a good one for us.
One thing maybe to point out with number 9 here, if you did have the combination of the looping on-ramps, again, potentially resketched to avoid some of the impacts, and you did maintain the current off-ramps, for right turn to the north and right turn to the south, there is a possibility that not only are you potentially saving the overpass structure, but not having to widen it. Because now you've essentially taken all the left turns and turned them into right turns. That is an option in one scenario that might help this concept through the process a little bit more. So something we'll take a closer look at when it's resketched with the ODOT idea.
But it just creates property impacts in all 4 quadrants because for the interchanges to come to the same place, yeah. I see what you're saying. Still, it just adds to the potential property impacts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hardy, yeah.
So, I mean, I understand we're going through all these scenarios here, limited due to the overpass capacity, signals, right turns. Now we're looking at these scenarios, property impacts, or I would say the major standout issues. At the end, somebody has to pay for it, right? Is there something, I'm sure that's also part of your study. I don't know if it's coming here in the next few slides, looking at the budgets and what we can get out of the budget to make it happen. Is something that's coming here in our slideshows today?
Not a particular slide, but I will hit on that at the very end. So if you give me the opportunity to finish these last couple of concepts, we'll get to that reality coming next. So.
And just a time check, we're down to about half an hour.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
Okay. Let me hit the last 3 concepts and then we'll talk about next steps and what comes next. So, concept number 11 is, for lack of a better descriptive term, short descriptive term, we're calling it just a partial split interchange. So essentially what we would do is we would eliminate the current westbound off-ramp that exists today and instead put that off-ramp further to the east so that it would then come to a new interchange at Olson. The benefit of that is it provides at least a little bit of opportunity for some of the demand that wants to go north to not have to go through the Main Street interchange. And instead, you can kind of peel that demand off onto Olson Road and let that demand get out of the interchange itself. Unfortunately, that's not really the highest order of demand that we're projecting here. So I almost want to just throw this concept away. And it also has another fundamental flaw that I'm sure Kelly and Teresa want me to point out real quick is while the image is limited, just off the screen here in the white space is the on-ramp from the Laurel interchange. So geometrically speaking, you can't have an on-ramp and an off-ramp within close proximity to each other. So this one is probably, if it's not flawed enough in terms of what this lack of benefit, this one has more of a geometric design flaw that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I kept it on there just so that you can see that we thought about how to maybe split these interchanges up a little bit and create a frontage road scenario with North Front Street. I don't think it makes a lot of sense, and I don't think there's really any real reason to even consider something like this because you were limited on the south side with the data center complex here. Can't really get a frontage road similar to it on the south side without infringing on some of their built parking lot environments. And so it just doesn't seem to have any real operational benefit. I want to throw it away. but we kept it on there. for the sake of
I got a quick question for you though.
Yeah.
What about bringing that on-ramp and just extending it to the Sage Center? So rather than going all the way to Olson, why don't we just come in on Sage Center? And then one of the problems we're having is that on-ramp is getting the ODOT is concerned that that traffic is going to back up into the actual freeway. So why don't we bring that on-ramp onto Sage Center, make that Front Street part of that? And because I know a lot, I've gone on in some areas where that's the case, where the on-ramp is just very, very long and it actually includes part of Front Street, and there's businesses off that, and it works out just fine.
David, I'm sorry, was that Alex or David? I'm sorry.
David.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I don't know if I quite understand what you're saying. Maybe you can repeat or.
Yeah, so where the Sage Center is, rather than bring that on-ramp, we're on the traffic is coming onto Olson. Why don't we bring it onto right where it comes up to the Sage Center and use part of the Front Street, so over to your left, use part of Front Street as using that basically a makeshift on-ramp.
I think the distance.
That's an off ramp, coming off the interstate.
Sorry, I apologize.
Instead of turning
Off
on
ramp.
And go to
Yeah.
Front Street instead of going to Olson. Go
Yeah,
from the off-ramp
so
straight
the
up
off ramp to the freeway goes past, basically comes on the Sage Center, and then and then we use that part of the Front Street for that off ramp. I apologize, I was using on ramp, off ramp.
So the Sage Center, there is no Front Street. There's nothing, the Sage Center doesn't have any road improvements on its south side.
Yeah, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to basically take off. Goodness gracious, I wish I could show you on my screen what I'm thinking. So there's a road that's going north and south right next to the State Center, correct?
That's Olson. That's
Yeah,
Olson.
that's Olson. So what you're saying is that we couldn't just come straight to that?
That's what
That's what this concept does.
Okay, I apologize. I was looking at the map thinking that that's way back. So that
Yeah,
is okay.
This line right here is a new off ramp that would then
Gotcha.
come.
Okay.
Yeah.
My confusion. I apologize.
That's okay.
But isn't the concern, even if we did move it to Olson there, that we still wouldn't have the distance
Correct.
between?
Yeah, you don't have enough room to bring the Laurel Lane on ramp, which comes in right about here, and then have the diverge to the off ramp.
What's the distance that it has to be?
I don't know the exact the dimensional details, but it's way more than what we're showing here.
Why can't we do it somewhere in the middle?
That's what
Why does it have to be Olson? Why can't it come in on the,
on Second
right
Street.
about where your mouse is now?
Yeah, that's
Why
that's
can't
a
it come in over there?
that's a scenario that there's any number of little nuanced little tweaks like that. I think in that case though, you'd probably want to bring kind of a looping scenario and bring it.
And put a stop sign there, that way they could turn
Yeah.
left or right.
And I don't think you've got the distance, right? You'd have to push Front Street further
Okay,
north and align it. So that's an option, but yeah, it comes with some baggage that maybe is not intuitive. So, well, let me move on to 11 because we're getting a little time constrained here. So this was one that I just came up with because I wanted to at least show a concept that brings in some of this larger sort of circulation and planning that the city, I think, needs to continue to push for. So on the south side, you got an assumed extension of Oregon Trail to Olson. And then at some point, if the urban growth boundary modifications ever happen, then Oregon Trail could potentially continue on an easterly track, connect to Laurel Lane, which is somewhere over here where my cursor's flopping around. And also, as envisioned in the TSP, now again, it has its challenges, but could you potentially extend Olson underneath I-84? Sure, yeah. With a lot of money, you can probably. But if you did that, what if you had sort of a partial half interchange where you can kind of loop around? And this geometry is, again, very similar to the geometric needs that we showed earlier, the park low. But in this scenario, you kind of loop around and you connect to Olson Road at a new interchange form. Now, you might be asking why we don't have that same on-off ramp things. Well, in this case, we're kind of pushing the diverge for the off-ramp a little bit further to the west to kind of create that separation and make that a little bit more of an opportunity. But as you can see, the circulation of the geometry of this looping off ramp, you really kind of get into some more property impacts. Now those are
There's a motel going right
motel
there.
going in there. So again, putting it out there.
There's also a lot of,
Residential, they're gonna be over there too.
well, I'm also thinking just the current topography there. There's such a huge difference. I mean, there's about an 18-foot drop between
There is.
this and the property. Just, you don't have to go very far west and you've dropped 18 feet.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there would be a lot of earth to be moved
Yeah,
and probably found.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
yeah.
Are you wasted your time?
No, I'm putting it out there. I think where the concept like this could be beneficial, if you can get past the geometry and the grade and the property impacts, right? Where you get the huge benefit from something like this, if you had an Olson connection, is right now a lot of your weekday PM peak hour demand that we're forecasting is going westbound on the freeway and trying to get home to go south on Main Street. Well, if you had an option like this, you can peel off a lot of that demand and let them use Olson to get home. Therefore, bringing sort of a lot more latent demand or capacity back into the Main Street overpass that you wouldn't have otherwise. So that would be the only reason why you might consider an option like this, is you just give people options where the peak traffic demand flows are located in a forecast scenario. So yes, Kelly, go ahead.
I just want to throw out too, I think that the additional challenge with this one is that we already have 3 interchanges that don't meet spacing standard, and this would be one more right in the middle of that. And I don't know that we'd be successful
Yeah.
in getting
Nope.
an additional off ramp there.
Yep. No, that's a good point. Okay, let's move past this one for the rest of it. So, I think I got a numbering problem here.
you did.
Yeah.
Your second 11 was well.
Yes, yes. Number 13, this was one that ODOT had wanted me to add into the mix here. So I kind of reimagined it and combined it with a couple of our other concepts where perhaps this Parklow A scenario, at least in the southwest quadrant, could take on a little bit more of an enlarged form to maintain and or keep a lot of the southwest quadrant intact. So in this scenario, you still have a eastbound diamond sort of configuration on your off ramp, but instead of coming off way up here, you diverge off the freeway way further to the west, and then you kind of come around through these undeveloped parcels, and then you kind of parallel the high voltage power line alignment, and then you connect to a new interchange form just kind of to the north of the BPA power line easement. And then you're probably grade separating over the southwest first alignment to kind of maintain and not impact a lot of this potential development over time. The northeast quadrant still has that same kind of geometry loop ramp. So I think this is one that we threw on there just to kind of have an option that maintains and limits the impacts to at least one of the 4 quadrants with these looping ramp scenarios. So I think operationally, it doesn't change too differently from the Parklow A that I had shown right there. Has a lot more cost, a lot more impacts, right? Probably has a lot more environmental impacts given
Yeah, because that's a wildlife regulation.
wildlife areas. So yeah.
I know, because that's behind my house.
Yeah. So I guess the question I would pose, that's the end of the concepts here. There probably are some more that we didn't think about today, and I value and would like to hear your input. I know we've kind of visualized a few verbally here that we will kind of take back to the drawing board. I've got some blank sheets that I'll pass out to you if you want to take these home and to try your hand at some traffic interchange design work and send them back to us. If you think of something that's unique or you'd like us to throw into the mix, this would be your opportunity to kind of help us visualize some alternatives.
I'm just thinking that the north and south side, they both have front streets, but the configurations are slightly different and the location of the businesses are slightly different. So I don't think that it's beneficial to look at them as a mirror image. I think they're both unique. And so that they need to have their own unique traffic patterns. As that's the best I can put it, because I'm thinking on the north side, the really large one that you were talking about that would encompass both the front streets and the on and off ramp would be most beneficial there, because I think it would have the least negative impact on the businesses. Whereas on the south side, I think you can get away with a small roundabout just at Front Street. Just for the same concept, but I don't think the right in, right out is, or cutting off streets is the right direction.
And I'm going to echo that. The right in, right out, and the cutting off front streets, in my opinion, is kind of a no-go. But just I had a question for you really quickly. So if I understand correctly, if we widen the overpass and we lengthen the off ramps to the freeway, that's not going to solve our problem. That's not going to limit the need for closing off front streets and right in, right out access.
Yeah, I think the forecast demand scenario here, and again, this is a 20+ year forecast with some fairly conservative, aggressive growth scenarios, but maybe it's not so aggressive considering how much growth Boardman has been seeing lately and how much development pressure they're starting to see from the development community. But the demand profiles that we're showing here with all the residential growth and all the potential growth in freeway-oriented uses at this interchange, we're projecting some traffic profiles that just can't be mitigated without some pretty significant traffic control and widening scenarios. And simply widening and lengthening the off-ramps, it buys you a little bit of safety time, but it doesn't buy you capacity. And that's where I think the limitation exists today is capacity is your challenge. Geometry is your challenge. Your built environment is your challenge. How do you weave an option together that minimizes and benefits the most? And I guess the question I wanted to pose to you all today is, of the 13 that we shown here, certainly there's enough we can just throw away immediately and not even bring back to the table. But what did you see or hear today that gives you the most promise? Which of these concepts did you see, that we should spend some more detailed time on and start to kind of work through the more logistical challenges? Because that's really our next step.
I think the roundabout concepts are probably the most beneficial. And I would just, like I said, echo, we can't do a mirror image on both sides because they both have their unique challenges on both sides. But I think the roundabouts are probably the most beneficial. Another concept that I wanted to bring up that I brought up last time was, as a temporary solution to help slow down traffic and for safety reasons, is to put a stop sign at the Sinclair corner, so to slow down that traffic before it crosses over. And the same thing at where the Pacific Northwest was, put a stop sign there to slow down the traffic going northbound. And that would help traffic coming off of the front streets enable them to go. So it's a three-way stop before we cross.
Stopping traffic on Main Street.
Correct. And it's done in many other communities. So if we put a stop sign for northbound traffic down Main Street before you cross over the bridge, right before Front Street, and put one on for southbound traffic on Main Street before they cross over the bridge, that would allow traffic to stop so people can get off of Front Street. And it would eliminate that people, they're just ramming on the gas to just trying to get out there to make those left-hand turns. That's where our biggest safety issue is. So just a temporary solution until we can figure something out would be ideal.
Yeah.
Brandon threw another temporary solution at me this morning that I'm hoping the ODOT staff will bring up this afternoon, because it apparently came from an ODOT member. There might be a couple of things we can try temporarily.
Yeah.
And see how they work. So
Yeah, because it doesn't cost anything. I mean, it's a very minimal cost to put in a couple of stop signs just to see how it affects traffic and if it will increase safety until we can figure this out.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I want to go back to David's question that he posed about, what do we get out of just widening the off ramps and creating that right turn and then the the through and the left. As much as, so it's almost 2 years ago now, when Matt and Isa and I sat and looked at the map and said, and we did the red box, I call it the red box exercise. They had a map, we had red boxes on it. These are parcels that are vacant and could develop. And I was like, well, I had a possible proposal here and I knew something might happen there. And there's a little rumbling about the hospital. But I will tell you that the stuff that has happened between our red box exercise, which I think is probably close to 2 years ago now, and today, I wasn't even close. I wasn't even close. I mean, we're having, you know, you talk about on one of those park low options where you would bring in the southeast quadrant over and bring it to that AWS. Well, there's 3 parcels there at the end on the east side of First Street. So adjacent to AWS. Well, the southernmost of those, we have a development proposal on, and it's going to planning commission. So that ability to do what you were talking about there, we're going to have a built environment there within the next year. Now the northern 2 parcels, which are the smaller 2, would still potentially allow some availability, but I don't know if it's enough if you don't have the southern parcel. So again, it wasn't even in the red box. It didn't have a red box.
And another concept to think about too is we do have the loop, which is a public transit system, and it takes the front streets, all of them.
It does.
Yeah, it loops around, and there's bus stops already there. And I mean, it's not saying that it can't be changed, but that's something else to take into consideration, that we do have a free
And their
public
ridership
transit
in
system.
Boardman has exploded.
It really has.
Yeah.
I know, because I drive for them part-time.
So, yeah. So I just want to kind of get to David's comment there and provide a response. I mean, I thought I was thinking about how Boardman's going to grow over the next 5 to 10 years when we had the red box exercise, and I didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't contemplate a 240 unit apartment, another 240 unit apartment building. I mean, because I thought, well, we've built Portview and we've built Tidewater. Gosh, will there be another one? And yet here we are. We've just approved another 240 unit apartment building. So it's just there is this growth that is happening, and widening the off ramps is not going to do it. It just doesn't do it. I mean, we get a little bit of cushion in doing that. But we don't solve the problem.
I need ramps to have 2 lanes on there. If you're trying to turn left, even though somebody's going right, you can't see to turn right.
No.
So trying to
Yeah.
double stack cars there is just asking for another problem.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, I
Put
purposely,
your nose out there.
I purposely sit myself when I'm coming to work in the morning and I'm on the westbound off ramp, I sit myself in the middle of that road, of that off ramp. So that some big truck doesn't come up on my right, my right side and block my ability to see, because it's already hard enough to see what's coming because from the left.
There's a lot of shrubbery and trees, and the fence.
Yeah, it's the fence on the overpass. It's the jumping fence that is the biggest problem for visibility.
Yeah, remember when it wasn't there?
Yeah.
David, you were going to say something?
Yeah, so I'm with Heather in that I don't think the north and the south sides can be treated as equals. I think that we need to look at something kind of a combination of 2. I would say I do like the number 5 concept, but that's probably the closest. But I'm still not crazy about it. So I think there needs to be it needs to be different on both sides to accommodate the ebb and flow.
Yeah, I admit there's some mixing and matching that we can occur. There's an infinite number of mixing and matching that we just can't try and visualize all in one shape, but that's the next step. Someone was asking earlier about where do we go next from here? So my assignment to you all today is, 1, I have some sheets I'll pass out at the end. And for those of you online, we can give you electronic version of those for you to print off at your own opportunity. But if there are other concepts that you'd like to sketch, I don't need a detailed engineering, just a quick lines on a map to convey the idea, and we can turn those into little bit more of a reality concept. But if you can get those to Carla by the end of next week, as well as any other thoughts or ideas or comments that you wanted to share regarding any of these other concepts, or I love this one, but can we tweak it? I hate this one, let's not even consider it anymore. Any kind of comments or additional feedback you can share. We will take and more than likely hear a lot more detail from our technical advisory committee this afternoon. Whatever comes out of that meeting, we'll revise these concepts accordingly and reshare those with everybody. But really, ultimately where we're going with this is we need to give at least one or two valid, viable concepts out of this mix of uses, so that we can start putting more energy into kind of looking at it. What is it actually going to take to implement? What is the more of a three-dimensional roadway with bike lanes and sidewalks and proper geometry? What is it really going to take to implement something like this? And what I'm talking about is a sketch that looks something more along the lines of wherever it is here. These type of ideas where you actually have kind of a lane style sketch. Now, these were done many years ago before we had the volume scenarios in place, but yeah, I know you're going to gravitate to that one. But this is in a large roundabout scenario here.
I'm telling you, I think that's our best.
That one I think is our best bet, honestly.
But I know there's a lot more hoops to jump through with ODOT.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I had that one as my top choice.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we want to take these single line sketches and move them into ideas like this, but we don't have the budget and the time to turn every one of these concepts into this sketch level.
Can you turn that one to where it does the point like it does on number 3, to where they can't go around the oval, but they have to go back around?
Yeah.
So do the, because this looks, what is,
Put the peanut on the end.
yes. So like on figure 3, where you have to kind of go back around, so they can't be doing around and around and around the circle. They have to kind of force them to go around. That would keep traffic flowing better.
And I will say that my other top choice would be number 7 with the Spewey.
The Spewey?
Yeah. Because it doesn't take away from the front streets.
Yeah. Yep.
The only problem with number 7 is that it does have the right in, right out. That's my only concern.
No, it's not. It's not right in, right out. You
According
got left hand. You got left
to the
hand.
description, though, it says it limits right in, right out.
At Front Street, yeah, I think we're just the geometry at the moment, we're kind of just conservatively showing Front Street as right in, right out, but there might be an opportunity to maintain it. But it's a detail that we can't really think about.
Well, Front Street right in, right out is a path we're on now. So,
Yeah, and Carla, we need to get off that path.
Because that path was implemented in 2009.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a unique environment that is gonna not have some limited impact to Front Streets. As I've been looking at these, I think right in, right out, it might be the best option we get out of Front Streets. I don't disagree, Heather. It'd be great to keep them as full intersections, but the geometry there, the distance between the interchange and the Front Street is really tight.
But by doing figure 5, you would potentially avoid that. Yes, you're still right in, right out, but you're going around the circle.
Right.
So
it's figure 5 is if we can figure out how to get through the policy issues with Federal Highway, figure 5 completely maintains your Front Street options.
Right, which is agreeable because on the south side, if they did right in, right out, it's only a half a block to go, and they have multiple entrances to get into all of their businesses there. Where on the south side, they have to go all the way down to Oregon Trail and all the way around. And like I said before, it adds a mile to their transit time.
Who's the other one? Not Kelly. This would be Kelly's question. It was the other lady. Teresa, would that be her question to her on this, toward that? I mean, how much more work we're gonna have to do to be able to do these large roundabouts?
Are you asking about getting it through federal highways?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually like an approval process now. They consider this a change in access to the freeway. So ODOT makes the recommendation, but FHWA actually owns that approval by rule. Like I said, I think we could have some preliminary conversations with them about it. But until we actually turn in the report and they sign off on it, it would be very difficult to say for certain that approval will be obtained. One thing I would like to ask from listening to you all visit today is I hear the concern about the needing to maintain access and local circulation to your businesses off of Front Street, particularly on the south side. But I am wondering if there's an opportunity for some of these roundabouts shown about halfway down that could circle you back around. If you could just provide some thought and consideration to, you know, maybe they're right in, right out where they exist today, but you have the opportunity to flip around on Main Street and come up and make that right turn movement somewhere in between, because likely, you know, we're going to try to move in the direction of meeting the access spacing standards within the IAMP area, and a roundabout is considered a full movement connection. But I think that maybe somewhere halfway down would be a reasonable kind of middle ground to meet. But I would like you to maybe think about that as you're driving around town, maybe accessing your businesses. If something like that may be palatable to be a middle ground solution.
Yep. Okay. Well, thank you, Kelly. We're 4 minutes from time here. I know people probably have lunch plans or are getting hungry, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up. But again, if you can provide us back with some feedback and some mini sketches, we'll take anything you got. We'll take what we hear back from the TAC meeting and kind of reshare that with everybody as a culmination of thoughts and concepts today. Ultimately, where we need to go with this fairly quickly, though, is get to which one of these concepts, one or two of them, probably have some kind of valid merit to them to where we can start diving into the details. And regarding cost, yes, that would be kind of the next step, is to start thinking about what it's going to cost to implement some of this. None of these concepts are cheap. There isn't one that's 1 million versus 50 million. They're all probably well north of 20 to 30 million when you look at them as a package scenario, maybe even a bit more. So that's going to be, I think, the challenge going forward is, how does it get paid for, right? And I don't think there's a scenario where the city of Boardman can sit back and say, well, this is ODOT's problem, they'll figure it out. I think this is a intergovernmental situation here where the development community is going to have to be responsible for some of this, and the city's going to have to find a way to ask them to start paying for some of this. And whatever the solution is, that's how it gets worked out. So there's a lot of steps going forward, but this plan is going to have to come up with some kind of an implementation scenario, funding scenario that doesn't rely upon the money bag falling out of the sky. And that's just going to have to be a reality that the city of Boardman and ODOT are going to have to struggle with a little bit. So.
Yeah, and for those of you who are really geeking out on this, we are recording this meeting. We will record the meeting this afternoon, and those will both get posted to the strategic planning page for the Main Street IAMP. Probably you won't see that until Monday. I'm just thinking by the time they download and staff are able to upload them, they'll probably appear they might get posted tomorrow. But I would encourage you to go look come Monday. And, you know, maybe what I can do also is we can maybe take that blank sheet that you've got, and we can just put that on the page also. So people could go to that page and just get to that there, rather than trying to figure out who needs to get it emailed to them. We'll just post it on the page as well.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time, everybody. Again, we'll pass out some
Steering wheel. I mean the steering wheel.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks all. We're gonna officially adjourn. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Then we're supposed to be letting the dogs out.